candidates have been urged to come up with innovative campaign strategies just a few months before the filing of certificates of candidacies.
Candidates for the upcoming polls must think of new ways to campaign during the pandemic. They are discouraged from going house to house to distribute campaign paraphernalia.
Kailangan mabigat ang creativity mo, mag-innovate ka, mag-iisip ka ng mga para-paraan na paano ka makakakuha ng boto without even meeting that person. No? So probably, I don't know if you call it innovation, but siguro yung very good campaign propaganda through visuals would be one.
Former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV has announced his possible bid for the presidency. Trillanes said he sought to be included in the nomination process of the Isang Bayan opposition coalition, but noted that he will back out if Vice President Leni Robredo decides to run.
The 2022 presidential elections are now taking shape as former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV is the first to signify his intention to seek the presidency. How will the election campaign look like under a pandemic? We discuss in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to this Wednesday edition of The Chiefs. I'm sorry, I've lost track already. Of course, with me in the studio is Robbie Alampayo as Man the Fourth. And online we have Ana Marie Paminton of the Philippine Star and Luchi Cruz Valdez of News 5. Ana Bok, big story today. I suppose you all know. You guess natin ngayong gabi.
Excited na. Finally, politika naman pag-usapan natin.
Pero meron pa rin pahabol naman yan ng pandemic eh.
But before that, we did want to talk about this kasi kanina sa big story, parang two contradictory stories. On the one hand, Manila Mayor Isko Moreno was complaining, ang bagal ng gabi. In fact, sabi niya, super bagal daw yung pag-deliver ng vaccines. Sa Makati naman, ang sabi ni Mayor Binay, parang sobra-sobra kami ng vaccines.
It's coming out of our ears.
Oo, hindi. So it was nice. But I talked to Dr. Kong Quezon, and she reconciled it with basically one phrase. Sabi niya, it's just all about vaccine acceptance. Basically, she was saying, vaccine acceptance in Manila is much higher, and in Makati, namimili ang mga tao.
Kumbaga, sabi nga ng mga taga-Makati, ganito kami sa Makati. Choosy.
In fact, yun ang pinaproblema ni Mayor Binay na tumataas daw ngayon yung vaccine brand preference dahil sa pagdating ng Pfizer.
Tawag nga namin doon, Pfizer envy. Diba? Kasi parang yung mga nabakunahan na, sabi, sana inantay na lang natin. Sabi gano'n, no?
Para namang ang dami nang dumating, no?
Sinabi yun sa akin ni Mayor, diba, na talagang gusto ng mga, especially health workers na, gusto nila talaga yung Pfizer or some Western vaccine. Talagang umpisa pa yan na yung sa Makati.
Kami nga, wala pang shots eh. Gaya nga po nasabi ng mga doktor, you take what's available, wag na kayong mag-antay.
Kaso nandiyan na nga yung Pfizer.
Kung hindi, kami na ang pipila. Sige kayo.
Kami na, kung pwede lang.
Let's begin with our first guest for tonight. I'm certain everybody has already heard about what happened today, political developments today. Si Senator Antonio Trillanes announced that he is running for the presidency. Actually, yung paramdam niya dun sa Isang Bayan.
Kasi take note, we're 1 year away.
1 year away.
1 year away.
Pero parang sinalag ka agad ni Barry Gutierrez eh. Diba?
Well, kasi may qualifier si Trillanes. May qualifier si Trillanes na this is all premised on the idea that si Leni Robredo is running for governor sa Camarines.
Dinay na nga agad.
At atras siya pag ano.
Kasi sabi nga ni Barry the Vice President is still open.
Is open.
The presidency, kaya wala na.
Ano kaya yun, Baka strategy. Baka it's his way of making sure. Siguro, niya yun, ang message niya doon ay, handa marami kaming options.
Pero lahat
Lest you think na walang option, di ba? Marami naman.
Pero lahat
Siguro
naman yun, di ba?
statement.
The point is, kailangan umangat na yung pangalan mo kung nag-iisip-isip ka. But mapapag-isip ka rin. The last time Justice Carpio was here, di ba? Tinanong natin about isang bayan. And to be perfectly honest, it was sort of an underwhelming response nung kinumusta
Yes.
natin. O kamusta na ba? And and he said, well, we're still hopeful that we can have 2 people. And then they were less specific now when they launched.
Yeah.
Walang
Yes.
binanggit niya sa atin, dalawa lang naman. Si Vice President Lenny, saka si Isko Moreno, Mayor Isko Moreno. The last time he was with us, diba? Yun lang ang dalawa.
Dapat pala tinanong nyo si Senator Trillanes.
Hindi, but actually that's a good point. Siguro kaya rin nagsalita ngayon we'll talk to him later. But to your point, hindi siya binanggit doon sa dalawa.
Yun nga.
Dalawa lang, diba? In fact, tinatanong niyo pa nga, diba? Sino pang iba, wala na. Diba?
Oo. Ang mga
Actually-
tinanong si Bongbong Marcos, nasabi naman niya, di ba? Dapat may track
Para
record
namang
na.
hindi mo alam yung sagot.
Well, you just have to be sure. You have to ask the
Hindi.
question.
Absent ako nung episode na yun, so pinapanood ko lang kayo.
You have to ask the
Kaya
question. Ako
natatandaan
nagtanong.
ko yun.
If you don't ask that question, tapos biglang lumitaw yun, magugulat tayo. Well, ang guest natin ay medyo late ng konti kasi nandun sa kabilang programa pa. Mukhang ayun na
Busy,
pakawalan.
busy.
Iniwan ko dun sa kabilang programa. Tumakbo ko dito.
Nasabit doon nasabit doon.
But we have a lot to ask him, not just about the elections, but as well yung emerging election issues. Among them, West Philippine Sea. You do remember si Trillanes was the backdoor
course.
nag-back-channeling siya
Yes.
noong panahon yon. And in fact, he had a lot of controversial statements that he made over the years about what happened in 2012.
Not to mention, as a candidate per se, we have a lot of questions of paano ka ba mangangampanya? Di ba? Yun yung pinag-uusapan natin sa COMELEC. We don't know what the rules are between COVID and what is allowed or not allowed online. There's a lot of questions on paano ba maging kandidato sa 2022.
And not
Oh,
to
he's
mention...
here.
Oh, he's here na.
Okay.
Oo.
Okay,
Yeah.
he's here? Okay. Sorry, napahaba kwento namin, pero at least napaghandaan po ninyo. We begin tonight with former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV, who joins us online. Former Senator Trillanes, good evening and thank you for joining us. Welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening, sir. Long time no see.
Good evening po. ma'am.
Here.
Yes, sir.
Well, sir, pinag-usapan namin kanina yung inyong announcement kanina na kayo nga ay handang tumakbo sa 2022, pero nga yung qualifier ninyo kung hindi tatakbo si Lenny Robredo. Pero nga, napag-usapan din namin na si Lenny Robredo, yung kanyang kampo, ay nagbitiw ng salta kanina na hindi pa sila nagde-decide. They are still open to the possibility of running. They're not saying they are, they're still open to the possibility of running. In which case, parang everybody's in limbo. Kayo po, ano po yung inyong time frame or deadline until when are you going to wait? Until when will you put off the decision after which you will decide whether or not to go through with it or to go on your own?
Ngayon po, yun sa aking announcement kanina, we are already part of the selection process. So, doon po. Pero ang sinasabi ko nga po doon sa aking qualifier, kapag nag-announce na definitively si VP Lenny na siya ay tatakbo, hindi po spokesman, hindi it should be a definitive statement from VP Lenny. Kahit po sa akin lang privately, iba ho kasi announcement, iba yung decision. I am willing to step aside and withdraw my candidacy in her favor para lang masigurado namin na united po yung opposition. Ngayon po kasi yung sinasabing yung denial po ng
Bari.
ng mga spokes.
Well, hindi naman denial. It's more of they're still open. They have not closed the door to
opo. Kasi po dun sa aking statement, in view of the preparations of VP Lenny sa kanyang pagtakbo ng governor, which is a fact dahil naglipat na po siya ng residency from Naga sa labas. And that would be a first step to make her eligible to run for governor. So preparation po yan. Ayoko naman
Pero
po kasi
Senator,
Yes, opo.
Okay. Hindi ba medyo prudent kung naghintay-hintay kayo ng konti at saka ng confirmation, or are you in communication with her at the very least? And couldn't you have gotten the information straight from her first before declaring that you will run? Because it looks like she won't.
Okay, ganito po, no? Kasi meron pong selection process na yung isang bayan. And you need to be a principal candidate to be considered part of it. Ang status ko kasi, initially as I conveyed to them, was as an alternate. Ngayon, ang mangyari po doon, if hindi pa ready si VP Lenny mag-decide, hindi po tayo masasama sa selection process, at ultimately kung siya po yung mapili tapos sasabihin niya I have decided to run for governor, then that's it. Mawawala na ho. Everybody would lose by default. Yun po yan. Alam nyo kasi pati nga sinabi na mismo nila Attorney Barry Gutierrez, hindi pa nga sila sure, ano? Hindi talaga. So walang decision. And alam nyo ho, we have been communicating. Kaso kahit tanungin nyo po si VP Lenny ngayon, you won't get an answer from her.
Sir, and we do
Yes.
have to say, we do have to acknowledge that. I think not just you, a lot of political observers, a lot of people in media start with the premise that whatever the opposition plans to do, it all starts with the Vice President. Now, we are 1 year away from elections. Gaya nga nasabi niyo, preparations to eh. So pragmatically speaking, ano ba ideally, would you say that with all due respect to the Vice President, she needs to give us a definite stand and a definite message by when?
Wait, ano po, no? It would be unfair for anybody or somebody like me to put a deadline dun sa kanyang actions, yung kanyang decision-making process. Meron po siyang proseso na sarili and I respect that. Kaya nga po, pero alam din natin that everybody is on the clock. Importante po yung 2022 elections. Kailangan hindi na manalo itong mga taong ito at gigibayin talaga yung bansa. So kaya kailangan gawin. So para hindi po nagkakaroon ng vacuum, let's work on the assumption na hindi. In fact, nagpaalam po ako, Ma'am Lucy, doon po kila VP, that I will start preparing at sasabihan nila ako kung ready na silang tumakbo at hihinto na ako to give way to them. So lahat po naman ito, hindi ito parang mga padalos-dalos na moves. Ano? Doon po sa aming timeline kasi, marami po talagang kailangan pagpreparan. Ngayon that we have decided to run, ang pagpreparan na namin yung development ng policy prescription sa ibang aspeto ng governance. Dahil pagdating ng filing, we won't have time for that. By October, kailangan mo na itong ipresenta sa taong bayan at kumbinsihin sila that you're going to be the best alternative or you're presenting the best policy solutions to the country.
Mr. Pero I'm intrigued, no? Kasi binanggit mo yung selection process sa isang bayanan. Ano ba yun? Are you supposed to apply?
Yes.
Kailangan nyo bang sabihin na member ako? Mag-a-apply ba kayo mag-member? Tapos mag-a-apply ba kayo na ako interesado akong tumakbong presidente? What's the process? Kasi hindi namin yung natanong kay Justice Calcio.
Meron po silang initial, pre-selection process, may screening mechanism sila. So, yung mga pumasok doon sa pre-qualifiers ay in-interview nila. At kailangan nilang marinig yung affirmation mo if you are running or not. So, yung mga nagsabi po na interesado sila yung magiging kasama sa selection process. Yung iba nagsabing, we're not running for president, vice president lang. So, hindi rin sila kasama dun sa selection process.
Pero sino po yung unang nagbanggit ng pangalan? Kayo o sila yung namili at tinanong nila kayo? Or did you tell them, ako interesado ako? O
Sila
tinanong
po
kayo ni Justice Carpio na interesado ka ba?
Sila po ang nag-invite ng meeting. So sa kanila po nanggaling yung mga pangalan kasi you cannot volunteer yourself kasi kung hindi ka pasok doon sa kanilang pre-qualifying criteria, hindi ka rin ikukonsidera. So, ganun po
So,
Senator,
so
linawin.
sila ang So, in short, the decision will be made by them. Sila ang mamimili. So, kumbaga, ikaw, you will have to convince them first. Parang ganon.
Opo. Yung interview process, isang criterion lang yon. Marami po sila. Tinitignan nila, may vetting process sila, meron silang past accomplishments, academic preparation, mga positions sa iba't ibang issues. Kasi meron pong mga, kumbaga disqualifiers, Kung pro-EJK ka, una-una, hindi ka na-interviewin. Kung pabor ka dun sa anti-terror law, hindi ka na, kumbaga mga yun eh.
Plataforma.
That's a red line for them kaya hindi nasala ng gusto. So ganun po 'yan. Then meron din online voting among the members nung iba't ibang organizations po ito eh. Yung conveners would be representing a specific organization. So yung Magdalo po kasama po diyan, one of the conveners, Akbayan, yung Bayan Muna, Civil Society. Marami pong doon.
So Senator, nung sinabi nyo nga po na ngayon pa lang hinahanda na yung plataforma, yung programa, the policy frameworks, as you said, were you referring to Isang Bayan or were you referring to Magdalo? When you say na inuumpisahan na namin buuin yung programa?
Sa amin lang po, sa aming grupo. To myself in particular as the representative of the Magdalo Group. Kasi po yung Isang Bayan, meron din silang mga principal advocacies like itong sa West Philippine Sea issue. So kailangan i-pursue natin yung decision ng arbitration court. So kailangan po lahat ng kandidato should be amenable to that. Meron ding gusto na to hold these Duterte officials accountable for their crimes.
Pero kayo, anong distinguishing platform niyo or quality ng platform? Anong
bentahe nyo?
Unique value proposition niyo sa inyong platform? Kasi pare-pareho naman kayo siguro na kakalabanin niyo si Duterte. Pare-pareho, no? How will you be different?
Actually, may kandidatong nagsabing hindi nila gagalawin si Duterte. They would be a healing president. So, ganon. Ako, sabi ko, maliwanag. Talagang, kung papalarin tayo, talagang idediretso natin sa kulungan yan at para hindi na tularan in the future na nakita nyo yung gains ng ating bansa. Ni-reverse talaga nitong mga ito eh. Pero anyway, going back to your question, I believe yung track record naman natin sa pakikipaglaban sa korupsyon, pakikipaglaban sa mga gumagawa ng iba't ibang anomalya sa ating bayan, yun po ang titindigan natin. And I still believe that we have so many issues, pero yung corruption would still be at the center kasi pagka-corrupt yung presidente, just like Mr. Duterte, lahat ng aspeto ng governance ay pakikailaman, matatamaan. Kita nyo yung ayuda, pinagkakakitaan, yung bakuna, pati nga PPE. Kailangan na bigyan ng basbas ng Davao Group bago ma-accredit. Kumaga, lahat na pinagkakakitaan. Yon ang sinasabi ko na at the core of this 2022 elections would be the corruption issue.
Senator, tinatanong ko yung process ng selection kasi the last time we talked with Justice Carpio, yung binanggit lang niya ng kandidato, top of mind sa sambayan natin. Dalawa lang si VP Lenny lang saka si Mayor Isko Moreno. Tinanong namin siya kung may dagdag pa, wala na siyang dinagdag. Ano pong
yun nga po ang nangyari po, kasi alternate ako. When they asked me, sabi ko, I am an alternate candidate in case VP Lenny doesn't run. But then, ang sinasabi, as an alternate, you won't be eligible to the selection process kasi doon pa yung principal mo. Kaya nga po ako nagbago ng status. Yun po. Ngayon, yung sa June 12 daw po, as I understand, doon po nila i-announce yung the selection process para maunawaan po nung publiko. So yun po.
Okay, yung sa selection process, again, maybe you could go further now on that details. Kung pagka in-announce nila sa June 12, what happens? Is it a transparent process to the entire public, or is it the convener groups, kung sino man sila sa and i-announce na lang nila bigla kung sino? What do we know about that process?
Meron portion po doon na yung participation po ng mga members ng isang bayan, lahat po ng mga members ng iba't ibang organization, so sasama po sila dito. Parang po yung primaries ng Democrats or Republicans, the Democrats would be the ones picking their nominee. No? So ganun po ang mangyayari doon. May portion po yon. It's not the be-all and end-all of that selection process, so it's just a portion. Then meron po dun sa academic preparation, tapos dun sa kanilang positions on different issues, meron ding mga past accomplishments. May grado po yan. Lahat po yung, there would be, as I understand it, 23 conveners na sila yung mag-aano doon.
Senator, pwede bang kumustahin yung isang bayan mismo? Gusto ko lang kumustahin. As far as you appreciate it, because it really started off as with a very wide spectrum. Left, to the right, sa Makabayan all the way to Magdalo. Is that spectrum going to hold?
We certainly hope so. Pero hindi natin talaga mapipigil. Itong ginawa ng isang bayan, talagang you would give credit to them na they have reached out to the broadest spectrum possible. Na hindi nagawa yan ng opposition. Yung opposition kasi, ito lang, yung mga iba't ibang partido, pero hindi namin na-reach out yung mga moderates, yung civil society, yung church groups. Ito na, nagawa nila eh. So it's a broad spectrum. But realistically speaking, kunyari may mapili man na isang kandidato, meron at meron pong malalagas dyan. But as far as Magdalo is concerned, we are fully committed to support whoever ang mapipili ng isang bayan. Yun po.
So
How
gusto ko
do
balikan
you
yung...
read your... Yeah, sige,
Gusto ko lang
go
balikan
ahead,
yung
Ed.
tanong ni Lucy kanina. Ano bali ang bentahe ninyo talaga as a presidential candidate? I know that a while ago you also mentioned na malaking bagay sa inyo yung na matalo yung pamilya ni Pangulong Duterte at ididiretso niya siya sa kulungan. Pero I suppose that cannot be the be all and end all of your campaign. In other words, what else would anybody expect from would the Filipino people expect from Sonny Trillanes as far as as being somebody in charge is concerned?
Well, we want to address the major problems of the country first and foremost. We expect an economic situation that is really critical, especially a post-Duterte, post-COVID economic status. That's why ngayon po nagkokonsulta na po ako sa iba't ibang mga ekonomista to craft an economic recovery program to address this. Kaakibat na dyan yung ating rising unemployment situation, yung worsening poverty situation, lahat po yan. Then, syempre, doon po tayo sa ating masabing forte, which is yung governance reforms and yung anti-corruption agenda. Then finally, another forte natin would be the security sector reforms. Yan po ang ating titindigan. Yung anti-corruption po, iba't ibang area, ahensya ng gobyerno, grabe ho ang corruption. Customs, immigration, Bucor, PIDEA, lahat po yan, and iba't ibang uri yan. Yan po, through the years, pinag-aralan natin yung problema at meron na tayong iba't ibang policy prescriptions to address the different forms of corruption in the bureaucracy.
Pero sir, I'm also very
How do
curious
you
kasi
read your
given that we are so polarized right now, we are so polarized, we are so fragmented now as a country. And at the same time, you're parang the linchpin of a lot of what you're saying is ididiretso nyo sa kulungan si Pangulong Duterte. I'm wondering how you intend to lead the country, or would this kind of an objective further fragment it? I mean, how do you intend to how do you intend to put us together again?
Well, alam niyo po,
Unite us. Sambayan nga eh. Isang bayan, di ba?
Sambayan.
yung pagpakulong po kay President Aquino, una-una paglabas po nung ICC.
President
ICC.
Duterte.
Duterte.
you mean.
President Duterte. Yung
Ibang
pagpakulong po kay Duterte, una-una pag lumabas po yung ICC case, ihahatid lang naman natin siya eh. We don't even need to try him, ano? So ngayon, I agree, hindi po yan ang primary agenda. Sinasabi lang natin, doon sa aking mensahe, na alam nitong mga ito na pag nanalo yung oposisyon, diretso sila ng kulungan. Kaya they will really employ all dirty tricks in the electoral book para lang ma-retain nila yung poder. Pero nga, sinasabi natin, ang karakter ho ng mga Pilipino ganito. Kahit na gaano ka-polarizing yung election, after the elections, pag definitive ho yung panalo,
Victory.
nagkakaisa. Di
Eh
ba?
yun nga ang tanong ko, Senator, no?
Yes.
Realistically, no? How do you intend to beat a president who is popular even in the midst of a pandemic? Paano nyo gagawin yan? Kasi hanggang ngayon, ang taas pa rin ng trust rating niya, ng popularity rating niya. Samantalang ang opposition ngayon, I mean, di ba, sobrang, sabihin na natin,
They were
no,
badly
is
beaten in 2019.
united. Yeah, yes.
Ito po, no? We're also conducting internal surveys. At hindi ganon. Yung sinasabi niyo po, ano yan? It's a myth. Hindi po siya 90%, 80%. Hindi po. Especially nung nag-conduct po kami ng last na survey namin, nung February, that was February, no? Bumaba na ho siya significantly. At ngayong last 3 months, grabe ho, maraming mga issue. Itong West Philippine Sea issue, itong resurgence ng COVID, yung kapalpakan nila, marami ho nawalan ng trabaho. Tapos ito ngayon, yung sa debate lang niya kay Justice Carpio, yung launching ng isang bayan, marami hong factors. Then magkakandak po kami ng survey namin within the next few weeks. So we will see. Pero iba po ang reading namin on the ground, kaya confident kami.
Yes, but Senator, surveys aside, and the president himself, his popularity itself aside, what did you learn from the 2019 elections? Because what is not a myth is walang binatbat yung opposition in the last elections. What is your takeaway from there?
Okay. Ganito po, yung context is different. Noong 2019, talaga malaking diferensya ng popularity niya noong time na yun. And then now, na-expose lang naman kung gaano kapalpak at gaano ka-incompetent si Duterte, lalo na nitong COVID. Maraming namulat ngayon. And they know enough na not to commit the same mistake. And yung 2019, one takeaway po doon is to prepare early. Nagsimula kami nung mag-prepare sa 2019 elections, April of 2018. Pero nawalo pa rin kami. Kaya nga, having learned that lesson, tapos mas importante pa, di hamak yung 2022 elections, hindi ba dapat natuto tayo at mas inagahan natin yung preparation? So, ganun po ang isang takeaway. At I believe, ano pa rin. Having said that,
Senator, sa dami ng problema natin ngayon, sabi nga nila problema yung jobs, vaccine, yung pandemic, jobs, trabaho, saka yung West Philippine Sea, si Xi Jinping daw yung puro J. Anyway, sa tingin nyo ngayon, sa laki ng problema ng bansa, you think the presidential race in 2022 will be yours to lose? Ano po yung confidence level ng opposition?
I believe that's an accurate assessment. It's the positions to lose. Kasi di ba ang incumbent, ang sasabihin nila ipagpatuloy. Grabe na nga ho bangkarote na lahat ng democratic institutions, giniba, pati yung mga kababuyan ginawa ng norm sa ating lipunan. You'll have to be intellectually dishonest to deny all these things. Precisely, yun ang kailangan nilang i-defend. Yung opposition naman, we will present hope, a vision na things will be better. pagka binigyan nyo ng pagkakataon ng oposisyon.
Sir, I'm wondering, what's your position and what should be the approach to China? And I ask in the context also of, in 2012, kayo yung naturing ang back channel sa negotiations with China. Nagbanggaan kayo doon ni Albert De Rosario, who is former Foreign Affairs Secretary, now a convener as well of Isambayan. I'm wondering if there's anything to settle there in Isambayan. And given that experience and that history, what's your policy approach now to China?
Okay, first dun po sa sinasabing Hidwan, alam nyo ganito, no? Pagka nag-deliberate kayo ng policy prescription, iba't ibang posisyon yan, iba't ibang arguments and how you defend and promote your position. But ultimately, being the architect of our foreign policy, the President decided, so end of story, nagkasama-sama na ho kami after that. Kaya ganun lang po ang nature niyan. And in the end, we were able to resolve the Scarborough tension nung time na yon na hindi ngayon ma-resolve nitong administration. And doon naman sa foreign policy as regards sa China in general, well, ganito yan. Hindi naman tayo naghahanap ng gera, but we will defend what is ours. At kasama po yan yung ruling ng arbitral tribunal. We will have to assert it. At isang major difference po is alam niyo po bang hindi na pinagpapatrolya yung Philippine Navy sa ating EEZ ni Duterte. Yan, when I was in the Navy, yan po ang bread and butter ng Navy. Palu-paluin kayo sa Alon, sa Scarborough, sa Spratly, sa High Seas. Kasi nga dinidepensahan nyo what's ours. Wala na ho yun ngayon. We will have to restore that. Pwede rin po natin na mag-join tayo doon sa freedom of navigation operations ng allied countries. Ipaitingin natin yung VFA at yung Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. Marami po yan. We will continue the modernization of the AFP. There are so many tools to do. Tapos dito naman, kung may tension, we can choose whether diplomatic approach or political approach. Yung political approach, we can internationalize and pressure China into moving out. Pwede tayong magpa-issue ng statement or resolution from the ASEAN countries, UN, EU. We will really apply pressure. So that's the political side. Yung diplomatic side, whether through DFA or back channel, through negotiations kung paano ma-resolve yung tension. Kumbaga, there is an array of policy options na hindi yung gera lang. Yung sinasabi ni Duterte, either sumurrender ka o gera. Hindi ganun. Ang dami, no? If prepared ka to be president, malalaman mo ito. But obviously, talagang pang barangay lang itong napili ng mga kababayan natin noong 2016.
Pero sir, just to zoom in on some particular details sa 2012 when you were doing the back channeling and you had a front view seat of what was happening even in the cabinet. In some of the cabinet meetings, you were even there defending what you thought was what you say is your position. From your perspective then, or your perspective now, were we deceived by China into abandoning Scarborough Shoal, or was it simply mismanaged by some officials from our end?
No, neither. Kasi ganito, sabi ko nga, nung pumasok po ako dyan at inappoint po ako ni President Aquino being a back channel negotiator na hindi po bawal yan. It's a foreign policy po ng Presidente. Yeah. Ngayon, ang option niya yun eh. Yun po ang option that he took. At nung time na yun, 80 to 100 ships nga dun sa Scarborough Shoal. At the end of the day, napababa natin sa 3, wala nang tension. Ngayon, wala namang reclamation po doon. Hindi naman nabitbit ng China yung isla papuntang sa bansa nila. Ngayon, kung gusto nating tapatan yung sasabihin, may 3 sila na yun, di magpadala ng barko doon na 3 rin. Nobody is stopping Mr. Duterte from doing that. Alam nyo, wala namang pinagbawal eh. He just chose not to send ships para tapatan. Di ngayon, sasabihin nyo, sino ngayon ang may possession dyan? Di tabla kayo, may stalemate kayo ulit.
Yes, sir, kasi, Yes, sir. What I meant was kasi in portions of the aid memoir that you were supposed to have released over the years, well, supposedly, ano raw, you were in touch with the Chinese and mukhang nagkakasundo na. You've been able to de-escalate the situation until there were some apparently wrong moves on the part of some people in government. I mean, yun po. For example, I'm quoting. Sige, I'm quoting from from the column of Bobby Tiglao in 2018, where he said you gave him portions of the aid memoir that you submitted to the president.
Okay, ganito po, no? Sabi ko nga sa inyo, meron kayong mga pagka nagde-decide yung presidente, iba't ibang kukonsultahin niya, iba't ibang advisors. Maaring magkakaisa yan, maaring din magkakatunggali. Pero at the end of the day, it's the president who chooses the best alternative na sa tingin niya ay yun ang ikabubuti ng ating bansa. So, lahat po ng nangyari po niyan ay binasbasa ni President Aquino. So, we are where we are now. Ngayon, yung sinasabi ko nga, from 80 to 100 ships, bumaba ng 3. Nung ayaw tanggalin ng China yung 3, edi it forced the hand of President Aquino to file an arbitration case na ipinanalo natin. So, ganyan po yan. Ngayon sinasabi, teka muna, may naiwan silang 3. Edi magpadala tayo ng 3 barko doon.
Yan po yung tinatanong ni President Duterte. Sino daw ba yung nagpakulong dun sa mga barko natin? Gusto niyang malaman kung in-approve yun ni President Aquino.
Okay, ganito po. As far as I could recall, yung isang barko po doon ay nag-request ng repairs. Yung isang barko. Yung dalawang barko naman ay bumalik because of inclement weather. Yan po ang sinabi sa akin ni President Aquino. Wala pong, I wasn't there when these decisions were made. Basta I was just informed, so kailangan kong magsabi dun sa China na umalis na yung barko namin. So we want you to reciprocate. So inalis nila yung ibang barko nila. Lahat ng barko nila sa loob, nilabas nila at naiwan na nga 3. So dati nun, mga 41 fishing boats yung nasa loob. May mga dinghies na I think 30 or something. Tapos may mga 17 na Coast Guard vessels dun sa labas. Ganun po yung status nun.
Opo.
Nagkatutukan pa nga nun.
Yes, sir. Kasi po Tiglao po coach you as saying na the president was not even informed na paalis na yung ating BIFAR ship doon. That it was pulled out of the shoal without his approval or consent.
I believe si President Aquino na lang yung makakasagot niyan. Hindi ko po alam kung anong kung sino or paano binigay yung order to pull out. I was just informed by the President na na-pull out na. So I had to negotiate para malabas natin mapaalis natin yung mga Chinese doon sa area. And we did. Kaya nga sinasabi ko, let's look at the result muna. Let's look at the start and you can check that out. April 2012, ano yung status nun? And ano yung ending nung July? Na wala po intention. Tingnan nyo yung Scarborough. By the way, iba yung Scarborough dun sa Spratly. Maraming kababayan tayong nami-mix up dyan. Hindi po yon. Magkaiba yon. Wala pong reclamation dyan. And wala rin pong mga fishing boats sa loob. Yun lang po ang importante po sa atin.
Okay. Former Senator Antonio Trillanes IV. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us tonight. Datingan po.
Salamat, sir.
Maraming salamat po.
Salamat po sa inyo.
We will just go into a break, so please stay with us.
Welcome back, the Chiefs, here on One News. Now joining us is Department of Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere. Good evening, Undersecretary Vergere.
Good evening, Yusek.
Evening po. Good evening to everybody.
Yusek, if you don't mind, I want to start with kanina, story namin sa Big Story. Literally a tale of two cities. Manila saying, sabi niya, super bagal yung pagdating ng mga vaccines. Makati Mayor Binay naman was saying, sobra-sobra kami ng vaccines dito sa Makati. Now, against the backdrop as well of, what got a lot of people excited, vaccines from AstraZeneca arriving in the country. Ano po ba talaga ang situation?
And Pfizer.
Sa vaccine supply. Ano po ba talaga ang situation?
Actually, sir, we are distributing, no? So people has to understand that yung dating po ng mga bakuna last week and over the weekend, nagkasunod-sunod po yan. And before that, these deliveries na mga dumating, nagkaroon tayo ng konting gap na medyo konti lang yung supplies natin at medyo nagkaubusan na po sa local governments. So kaya siguro baka nababanggit ng ibang local government talagang mabagal, walang supply. But as soon as we have received the AstraZeneca and the Pfizer vaccines and even the Sputnik V last week, we immediately distributed. So ngayon po, yung mga allocated doses ay unti-unti nang naibibigay sa kanila.
Pero bakit nga po ba yung Manila, 1,000 lang ang binigay halimbawa ng Pfizer, samantalang yung San Juan na kaliit-liit, 7,000. Ano po ba ang basehan ng distribution nga?
This I really cannot answer, ma'am, no, because it's the vaccine cluster which decides on this as to the allocation. But as far as I know, for the Pfizer vaccines, it was distributed or allocated based on the number of vaccines that they have, based on the burden of the disease. So ito po yung ginawang basihan kung paano po binigyan ng allocation ng bawat local government natin dito sa Metro Manila.
Hindi yung sa cold storage case.
Oo, hindi
Kasi
storage.
Yung sinasabi ng iba na kung sino lang daw ang may kayang mag-ano ng Pfizer.
Hindi. Sa tingin ko po, hindi lang cold storage. Of course, that's one of the main considerations. We cannot provide the local government without an ultra-low freezer na facility. So ito pong City of Manila, they have an ultra-low freezer facility. Isa sila dun sa meron po tayo. But the other LGUs kasi in Metro Manila, they were able to contract third-party logistics, mga firms. Kaya katulad po ng Taguig, wala sila sa kanila, pero na-hire po nila o nakakontrata nila yung isang 3PL, yung third-party logistics. So, pwede po silang tumanggap ng Pfizer. So, ganun din po ang nangyari sa mga ibang mga LGUs dito sa Metro Manila. That's why they were provided.
Sabi din ni Makati Mayor, nagkakaproblema daw siya ngayon sa vaccine brand preference na lumakas dahil sa pagdating ng Pfizer. Are you seeing this as a significant problem? Kasi parating na yung dadating na yung Moderna. Magkakaroon kaya ng problema tayo dun sa halimbawa, bigyan na natin Chinese made vaccine. We have problem.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, naririnig ho namin, we're receiving anecdotal reports that people now are flocking our vaccination sites, especially when Pfizer came in. At ang lagi naman ho namin pinapaalala kung ano ho ang meron tayong bakuna, yun ang pinakamagaling para sa inyo. And actually, just recently, meron pong real-life actual na experience na study ng Sinovac na nagpakita rin naman po ng maganda ang ipinakita against severe infections and hospitalizations. So siguro po ang mga tao lang has to be reminded. But one thing that I can tell you, those who were refusing before are now flocking the vaccination sites. Tumaas po ng husto ang kumpiyansa sa bakuna. We are at now ang ating vaccine confidence from a low about 60% before. It's now at 75%.
Yusek, we had as our guest here si Father Austriaco last night, no? And he was saying that the process for getting vaccinated is too long. Parang may red tape, no? First of all, they're required now 3 documents. CEIT ba yan? Or parang mga ganon. Tas, may mga ganon. Tapos pagdating dun sa vaccine site, ibi-BP, tapos pag mataas yung BP, itetenga muna. In other words, medyo nag-time and motion nga kami kanina, yung reporter namin. inaabot nga po ng 1 oras. So they're saying, at the rate we're going, we will never be able to vaccinate, say, 100,000 a day in order to reach herd containment by, say, September. Ano pong masasabi niyo dyan? I mean, is there a way to cut down the vaccine red tape, as it were?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we have studied that already because we have observed already based on reports and based on this time and motion studies that we have done across the different vaccination sites that really there are these major bottlenecks, no, in our processes that keeps our vaccinees at bay and waiting for long queues, no, and long hours. So one of the things that we have already recommended to the vaccine cluster and we would want to implement actually would be that because the Philippine Society of Hypertension and the Philippine Heart Association have already provided recommendations to the Department of Health that vital sign screening is no longer needed for us to be able to vaccinate an individual. And
Yes.
looking at the experiences of other countries, there are only a very few countries which is doing this vital sign screening. And the Philippine Heart Association and the Philippine Society of Hypertension had been explaining that you only do this BP monitoring if you have a hypertensive patient who really looks like toxic, no, na meron siyang organ damage, talagang mukhang hindi siya pwedeng bakunahan. But aside from that, those who are having this BP, increasing for 10, 20 na tataas lang dun sa normal niya, hindi mo kailangan niyang paulit-ulitin pang i-BP at i-monitor natin.
But-
So that
Yeah.
So,
part-
But ma'am, para lang po malinaw, kasi marami akong kilalang ganyan eh. Can you put a number to that? Na for example, pagka nag-140, nag-150 ka over whatever, okay pa rin yan? Is there a number there that you can recommend that our viewers and also people administering can have clear
Down the line,
guidance?
kasi LGUs yan eh.
Hindi, baka ititigil. Are you planning to stop na? Kasi yun ang sinasabi nila eh. If you're hypertensive, you have comorbidity. Kaya nga kailangan mo yung vaccine. Di ba?
Yes, we have
And if you have a
already-
heart problem, comorbidity
Right.
yan. That's why you need the
Yeah.
vaccine. Bakit ka
So bakit pa isusukat? Yes,
So are you planning
exactly.
to stop na lang yung mga ganun check? Kasi tumatagal lang eh.
Yes,
Sila yung
ma'am.
priority eh.
We have already issued advisories, no? But the first question, the blood pressure, which you cannot give the vaccine, would be 180 over 120. So
Okay.
yun po yung
Yeah, yeah.
sinasabi. Because if you are at that stage and you have that kind of blood pressure, meaning you are in a hypertensive emergency already, and you have to be brought to a facility na higher than the vaccination site.
Okay.
So second, we have issued the advisory already. Unfortunately, there had been some reports and based on discussions with the local governments that they really do not want to not have this kind of monitoring as a precaution for them, as they say. But we are trying
Bakit?
to assure...
Tatakot, baka may mangyaring emergency doon at
That's correct.
hindi
Ma'am, but that brings us to the question na sino masusunod? Kasi nga po, you issued advisory pero are the LGUs bound to follow or do they have the leeway or the autonomy to just do it on their own?
They are bound to follow because we set the guidelines, we set the standards, and they should follow. Unfortunately, as you all know, the local governments or the local healthcare workers, whenever, of course, this is some precaution for them, as they say, and they still do it. But hopefully, the dissemination of this advisory would be taken already, no, and accepted by our local government so that we can be able to minimize or shorten the time that people has to stay in the
Yeah.
vaccination.
So it's an order. It's an order. It is not a persuasive statement. It's an order.
Yes, it's part of the guidelines actually. If you look at the deferrals, those people who are being deferred and not being vaccinated,
Yes.
one of the reasons why would be that because there is this increase in blood pressure. But you know that it
Oo.
increases before you get
Siyempre,
vaccinated.
kinakabahan nga.
We're anxious and all, but after a while it gets it lowers
Right.
down. So it should not be a
Yes.
reason for us to defer unless you have 180 over 120 and higher, and you cannot
Okay.
vaccinate
Yeah.
at that point.
Ma'am, just to be clear,
What
para lang
about
po
the
malinaw.
ano?
So what you're saying is that hindi dapat kukuha ng blood pressure pa, not unless obviously in distress na yung tao. In which case, mukha talagang may problema ka sa blood pressure, we will test you. Tama ho?
Yes, sir. And actually, in the guidelines, we have stated, no? So for those people who they think should be monitored for their blood pressure, you should have a separate lane for them instead of having people wait at the queue becomes longer and longer because they're waiting for this person to be
Right.
monitored for how many minutes and then take the blood pressure again. So that's part of our guidelines as well, a separate lane
Oh,
for them.
tsaka
Okay. So,
free consultation pa. Ma'am, yung nga sabi ni Father Austriaco, di ba? Ma'am, may isa pa, no? Sabi rin nila, hindi raw advisable na magkaroon ng parang mega center like Nayong Pilipino kasi nga raw parang it encourages mass gathering and it's going to be very hard to control the yung physical distancing, etc. Are you pushing through with the Nayong Pilipino plan?
This has been part of the resolution as agreed upon by the IATF officials. I think that was April 10, if I'm not mistaken, that the Nayong Filipino will become a mega vaccination site for drive-through and walk-in vaccination. This is part of the efforts of the government to speed up and to scale up vaccination. If you will look at our current situation and how we do our vaccination sites, these are small vaccination sites in each of the local governments scattered across. But if you have mega vaccination sites, access will improve for our citizens so that they can easily go to these vaccination sites and have themselves vaccinated. This is also in preparation for that time when the vaccines would really come and there would be a lot that has to be vaccinated because we're going to include already the other sectors by June, the A4 sector, and then eventually A5 and the B. So we need these big vaccination sites. So when it comes to the minimum standards for health that we are talking about, it's going to be, DOH will be part of the implementers, and we will never allow that we will be having this kind of mass gathering or we will be breaking protocols in this kind of activities or these vaccination sites that we are proposing to be established.
Ma'am, speaking of facilities and capacity, kamusta po mga ospital natin? We take note that the numbers have been coming down. Okta was said yesterday that yung reproduction rate had gone down to as low as 0.6 something. It's at 0.81, I think, today, the average. Given all of that and yung bumababang numbers, kamusta naman po ang mga ospital natin? Are they getting their capacity and their capabilities back?
Looking at the numbers and the utilization rates for hospitals, we can see that there is this decongestion already. But of course, until now, there are still specific hospitals which their ICUs are still full. We have had this improvement because we have additional beds that we have converted. We have converted our isolation wards into beds for our national government hospitals. And also we have seen lesser admissions for this time, especially when it comes to the wards and the isolation rooms in the hospitals. So looking at that, we are seeing that unti-unti, gradually, our hospitals are being able to decongest already. And sana, tuloy-tuloy po at talagang magluwag na ang mga hospital.
On the other hand, dumadami naman, nadadagdagan, hindi naman dumadami masyado, pero nadadagdagan yata yung cases natin ng Indian variant. How worried should we be and how will that affect our protocols?
Well, ma'am, yes, ma'am. When we talk about variants, syempre it's of concern. Yun nga po ang tawag ng WHO.
Sa India.
Opo, yung sa India po. It's a variant of concern as declared by the WHO at the global level, ang sabi nila. Kasi sa ngayon po, we already have about 43 countries where this Indian variant has been detected already. So pag tinignan ho natin yung variant coming from India, meron ho siyang 15 mutations na nangyari sa kanyang strain na yan. And yung 15 mutations na po yan, meron pong 3 of concern. No? Yun pong 3 mutations na yan, minimimic niya yung sa South African variant at saka yun pong sa Brazil variant, kung saan meron ng higher transmissibility, merong epekto sa neutralization of antibodies, meaning yung immunity nyo po ay maaring maapektuhan base sa natural infection kung kayo ay nagkasakit o kaya di kaya ay nabakunahan kayo. So these are the things that we are closely watching. As to if we are to be concerned, well, we should be careful and we should intensify our efforts. But just like with any variants, our protocols would still be the same. Same border control, yun pong ating minimum health protocols, ganun pa rin. Pero kailangan po i-intensify at saka kailangan talaga ma-comply ng maayos. Kaya po natin pinalitan ang ating border control response kung saan ginawa na po nating 7 araw na, 7th day na ang pag-test at 10 araw na kompleto sa national at saka po natin i-endorse sa local government.
Okay.
Okay. Maraming salamat, Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere. Ma'am, thank you for joining us tonight. Ingat po.
Thank you, ma'am.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
That will be all for this Wednesday edition of The Chiefs. We hope to discuss here. We'll keep the conversation going. Before we go, a reminder to our viewers, mask on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines. I'm Edwin Gao.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
And I'm Robbie Alampay. We are One News.